Greetings, New Gen. My name is Glenn, and together with my wife, Gregan, we lead Liberty Family Church. Stef Adrian, so good to have you here this morning as we unpack something that I think is not easy to discuss: conflict, honor, and spirit led unity in the church. As I've thought about our time together here, I was kind of reminded of Paul's anguish around this very thing when he wrote, I, therefore, the prisoner in the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And we all know that relationships matter deeply to God. And I think because of that, we face some of our greatest tests in relationships. Earlier this year, Stef and Adrian, you walked through a season of misunderstanding and offense that very easily could have led to lasting division. But through humility, honesty, and the grace of the Lord, God has brought incredible reconciliation and healing. And so our hope this morning is that in sharing the story, not to rehash every last detail, but to show the beauty of what happens when we choose to honor God by honoring his bride and by honoring one another. When we humble ourselves and when we allow him to restore what's been broken. And so, New Gen, as you listen, we pray that you will see how the enemy sows doubt, how he sows disunity, but also how the Spirit of God desires to bring unity and conviction and peace when we determine to live by a culture of honor. And so, just to help us set the scene, Stef, in broad strokes, can you tell us a bit about what led up to this initial fallout between you and Adrian?
Basically, what happened was a very, very small thing that escalated and spiraled over time into something massive. And it started out with a very simple thing in which Adrian approached eldership with something that was close to his heart and that he was passionate about, and asked us to partner up with him and just pray into it. And what happened was we took a long time to process that, and when we did come back to him, through a series of events and moments, it came across in a way that was dismissive and wasn't honoring of the heart with which he came to us with. And so that was something of the inception of what then ensued.
Right. So, Adrian, from your side, what was going on inside of you at the time? What were you kind of feeling? What were you wrestling with?
To sum it up in a few words, was we really felt frustrated. We felt unseen, unheard, and that we were being dishonored in some sort of way. Those are the words I'd use to basically sum up where we were feeling, and also a bit alienated in the process. So,
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when misunderstandings or offenses happen in a church family, they can cut really deep. When the church is churching, as Christ intended, his love calls us to an incredibly deep unity, and that really makes offenses, I think, really tear deeply within us. And so it's a sacred bond, and it wounds us, I think, where we're most exposed and most vulnerable. And so, Adrian, kind of as the situation was heating up, there was a moment where some WhatsApps and messages were shared, which was confirmation for you that you'd been dishonored. Without too much detail, could you explain that a bit more?
it was a moment where Rob and I were sharing some messages back and forth with regards to how we were feeling and how I felt that the process, wasn't being handled well, especially with the heart that we'd brought it forward with. And I'd shared a message with Rob, and in the context of that message, literally within a day, I think it was, we were on a group, and a couple of messages started going out on that group. And at the moment, we saw it as we were being dishonored, because the tone of the messages it actually directly related to the conversations that Rob and I had been having. So we instantly, in the moment, thought, well, Rob's gone back and had a chat to the team, and people are now, voicing their take on the matter, and looked at it in completely the wrong eyes at the time. I mean, at the time we were looking at it the right way, but it was something that really, really hurt us. Just say, wow, this is now being discussed, and people were not attacking us, but basically sending us quite a strong message to say, this is how we feel about it. Yeah, so
It's
that's,
easy to see how it can be seen that way.
yeah, it could be seen that way.
Yeah. So, Steph, it's quite a moment for you. Can you share kind of from your side what was happening?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that this wasn't over the course of 1 or 2 days. This was over the course of several weeks and even a couple of months that this has kind of been building. Um, and what happened in this moment was just the perfect storm.
Yeah.
And I can remember seeing it happen, and in it, I'm like, kind of, I looking at it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? And in that moment, I'm just so grateful. I had the presence of mind to be like, okay, step back from this. And as I began to step back from it, I zoomed out, and I was like, either this is what Adrian thinks it is. This is a case of us talking about him behind his back. But I know for a fact that this hasn't happened, which means it's the other alternative, which means that this is a coincidence of unspeakable proportions that has been positioned in this moment to come and to trigger both Adrian and Rob. And that's exactly what it did. It triggered both of them. And so what happened was I was with Kaz at that time, and we just began to pray. And then I began to reach out to Rob and Adrian and just say, listen, guys, this is what I think it is. I think that the devil's overplayed his hand here. He's used this to come and trigger both of you. Um, and um, and so our heart at that moment was just to come and pray into this situation that we felt very clearly was being used against what God was doing in his church and in the relationship at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much, I think, the wisdom of exactly what Paul tried to speak to the Corinthian church when he says, anyone whom you forgive, I also forgive. What I have forgiven, if you have forgiven anything, has been for your sake in the presence of Christ. And we do this so that we may not be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. And I think that wisdom, just in the light of the Spirit, highlighting that to you, I think avoided great potential for division. And so at this point, Steph, Adrian, and Sam were done with New Gen. They told me that they'd like to join Liberty. I checked it in with you as to why and what was going on. And what did you do with those questions which I posed to you?
Yeah. So again, in a context like this, we can think it was like this. The next day, Adrian's messaging Glenn, but what it was there was a series of moments, meetings, and conversations that were had that escalated and led to Adrian beginning to exit from New Gen and leaning into potentially joining you guys. And so I remember what happened was you messaged me, and I was like, oh goodness, okay, let me lean into this. And I was like, I want to do this in a way that honors Adrian. And something I've always respected about Adrian is just he talks straight down the line. He wears his heart on the shoulder, and I've just always loved that and appreciated that. And it's meant that I've wanted to do the same with him. And so I began to try and consider, how do I respond to you now? And I began to type out something of a message that I was like, okay, I need to honor Adrian in this, so I'm going to make it as objective as possible and just state the facts. And as I was busy doing this, God just arrested me after a long time and a lot of typing. I wish he started at the beginning. But what it did do was it crystallized some of my thoughts for me, and God just stopped me. He arrested me and just made it clear that that I can't say things to you that I haven't articulated to him, and that would be dishonoring of me. And so I stopped there, and I can't remember if I called or I messaged, but I was like, "Hey, this is what's going on. I need to share these things with you. Can we meet?" Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think some of Adrian's straight shooting that you're talking about, Adrian, you later said that you realized you'd been dishonoring the bride. Can you describe kind of what brought you to that conviction?
Could I add just on the topic of
Definitely.
the coincidence? I think it's irrelevant to say. In the moment, I pondered that what was happening. I mean, I wrestled with it for hours and hours and prayed to God and spoke with Samantha, and we just said it can't be. It just happened in such a crafty way that we said it can't be. It has to be this. And then in hindsight, looking back, just to see how crafty the devil really is. that he could use. And we're blind to this, we don't see how he's there and he's lurking all the time. We lose sight of that. And this was an absolute moment where he did that. He knew exactly which buttons to push and use completely innocent people. You know what I mean? Completely innocent. I mean, the message actually went out by somebody who never, ever communicates on that group. So that's it. No, it has to be. Something has to have happened, because this person never, other than to say, hey, I'm running late, or I'll see you then, has never got anything to say. So it was just so amazing to see how the devil uses those moments. And be vulnerable in those moments.
Yeah.
And we've got to really protect against that. And that's actually what led to our decision making. Steph, you made a joke about the Fast and Furious. I thought you remember that during the time that we were talking, that, Steph said, he has one word for me: I do things fast and furious, where, sometimes the church takes its time, and it's not something I do. I'm on the pedal all the time in life. So I struggled to, and I think that's what also was a catalyst that led to it, was the fact that I'm used to getting results, and, I felt the church were taking their time and not coming back to us, and what's going on, and, they're not interested, and all these things that come into your mind. And we'll talk about it at the end, but I've learned some valuable lessons about the Fast and Furious, and that term will stick with me for a long time. So coming back to this, there were actually three things, and I think the most important was for me is, and I'll read the three. The first thing was the love and care from Steph. And I'm not just saying that, Steph. At the moment I didn't see it, but when I went and pondered it, I really saw it. I remember Steph arriving at my office unannounced. Somebody came to me and said, there's somebody in the reception for you, and it was Steph. And this was after I'd sent a message saying, that's it, we're parting ways, we just want to move on. And, and I was quite surprised to find him there, because in my head it was settled. I'd sent him a message and that was it. I don't know if you remember that message. Yeah. So I was a bit surprised to see him, and he wasn't giving up. What I got from the meeting was, this is not on, because you'd had that revelation that you were sitting back, and you could see the storm, you could see what was going on, and we couldn't. I was in the middle of that storm. And it really resonated with me, Steph's the pastor of New Gen, and he took the time to just come there unannounced. So it showed a lot of things. It showed love, it showed care, it showed the fact that he wasn't going to let the devil use the situation to create division. He was absolutely not going to do it, and that really resonated with me. The second thing was a visit from a brother in the church that's very close to me, a man I believe that has such a prophetic ministry. God is really using him. Also just arrived, not with intention to say, hey, what you're doing. He just came to listen. And as we spoke, and that conversation went on for hours, I also got the sense that, hey, as a brother in the church, also caring, showing me that you are valued, because in the midst of that, you don't feel valued. You feel like they're not listening. Your ideas and the fact that we speak about God calling us to things, it's piffle, as Steph would say. But he came and he made the time, and that showed love and care and grace, and had words of wisdom, and had pictures and words from God. And then the third thing, which is the most important, was that very evening, or not the evening, that night into the early hours of the morning, I was awakened. I was wrestling with this, and it should have been an easy thing. I've made my mind up.
Yeah.
This is the facts. We're convinced of it, and we're moving on. But I couldn't. I felt the Lord saying, and it was such a convicting moment. I was lying there 2 a.m, and I felt the Lord say, are you honoring me through the decisions that you're making? And I tell you, it was like a knife to my heart. And I wasn't. And I think that was the turning point for me. It was the fact that, we're Christians and we love God, but we don't honor him. And the decisions we were making in the midst of all that were not honoring him. So much so that I actually live by today. I'll say it at the end, but those three things were really the catalyst for me saying, well, what are you doing? You've been so blind, the devil's just using you to create division. God is busy with such an amazing and beautiful thing in the church body. I felt dirty. I felt the devil using me for his things.
Yeah.
And I'm a Christian. I'm not there to be used by the devil. I'm there to be used by God. So
Beautiful.
that's when I messaged you very next day. And Step offered to kiss me, but I think I declined that. That was and not something I wanted to do, but others would lead up to that. I was just into that.
Beautiful. So obviously later on there was a meetup, and so the two of you obviously came back together. Steph, what was kind of the tone in the room at that meeting?
Yeah, I think just a bit of context about the kiss. And so Adrian had sent me kind of like a final message to say this is what he's done. And so we joked around early on in this process around if we could describe him, he'd be fast and furious, and the church and the eldership team is often slow and deliberate. And one of the learnings is I think we need to both meet more in the middle. But sometimes being slow and deliberate is something that I just embrace. And this was one of those moments where he messaged me. I think it was on the Friday, and he said they done, they're leaving, and I was like, oh, and I left it. And I left it till I think a Wednesday morning. And on Wednesday morning, I messaged him and I was like, hey man, I hear you. I'm sad to hear this. I'm gonna respect your decision, but the door's always open. And about 20 minutes later, I got a message, and the message was, "Hey, I think I've made a mistake. Feel like I'm dishonoring God and the church. Can we chat?" And I looked at it, I read it, I closed my phone, I put it away. I was shocked. I was like, "This is too good to be true. I don't know if it." And then later on that afternoon, it was about 8 hours later, I pulled my phone out and I looked and I read the message again and I replied, "I could kiss you right now." And I could. The reason for that response is just like in all my years, which aren't that many, but in all my years, never have I received a response like that to a situation like this. And so I said, okay, let's meet next week. Let's have breakfast together and let's just talk about what's happened. And we had a breakfast together, and he told me, much of what he's just told you guys, and we were like, okay. And he said, like, what do we do next? And I was like, I don't know. Wasn't expecting. There's no book around this. Like, this doesn't happen. And I said, I think we actually need to sort our stuff out, and then I think you and Rob need to sort your stuff out. And so we then sat together and had a meeting. And the way it worked and the tone of it was, I sat down and I said, I need to take responsibility for my part of this. And I didn't come in pointing my finger at him saying, you did this and you did that. But I was like, this is the part I've played in this. And then I said, I'm sorry for that. And then I said, what I'm going to do to ensure it doesn't happen again. And then Adrian did the same on his side, where he came and took responsibility for his stuff and said sorry and said what he's going to do to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And the tone and the atmosphere of that meeting was of humility, of mutual submission, of love, of care. It was a very, very sweet meeting.
Sure. That's beautiful. Yeah, I agree with you. It's incredibly rare. You've both kind of spoken around taking responsibility for the parts that you played in. Adrian, how do you find that posture of humility which you owned and brought forward? How do you feel that shifted the dynamic, obviously between you and Stef, but also for the whole situation?
Oh, it's an absolute game changer. My character is as such. I get things done, and I get it done the way it needs to be done. There's so many life lessons through this. And I think when you take a step back, as I did, and I looked at the situation, just it's like almost being saved from a disaster. And to say, wow, God is actually using us, and He uses many people. I think there were learnings for everybody in it. It's not just a one-way street. It's God was using me, He was using Stef, He was using the church, He was using all the players involved to get a message across. And it's actually changed my life. If I have to say, it really changed my life. As I said earlier, I live by one question now when I make a decision. So I don't do things fast and furious anymore. I look at the situation and say, is what I'm about to say or is what I'm about to do honoring God? And if the answer is no, then I go seek counsel with leadership. We had a conversation about that. I think it's so important because many people don't do that. You make decisions from emotion, and you make decisions from the way you're feeling, and you upset, and the devil is throwing things in it. But when you really take a step back and you say, let's just look at the situation for what it is, pray into it, but ask that one question. And it's something I live by right now. I can say, if you ask me what I live by now in my Christian walk, it would be that. Sure. Every decision I make every day, every word that comes out of my mouth, I ask myself that question internally first. I also want to say something else came out of it. I felt God really saying to me, there's a mission field here And it's interesting. Sometimes you think the mission field is outside of the church, but a lot of time, in this particular instance, I felt God saying there's a mission within the church that He was using us all for. And I actually got this revelation. I saw this picture of so many families, so many strong men making bad decisions, as I almost did, and that's really drawn them away from the church family. And we all know when you're out there in the wilderness and not in a church family, you've got a target on your back. And I felt God say, "You're going to use this. He's going to use this moment for us to reach out to people." And anybody listening to this message,
Yeah.
I can say that if you're in that space and you're wrestling with things that I was, not to make rational decisions, take it slow, and really go and seek God's heart in it and ask that question: are we honoring God in the decisions we're about to make? Because they're everlasting decisions. I mean, I could have made a decision that would have potentially wrecked our family, because we're part of a church family in Eugene. And I'm proud to say that. I've said it to Stef many times. It's such a saving grace to be in a church family. It's where you're safe. It's where God looks after you. It's where you're fed. It's where you contribute, and then also perspective change. Our perspective shouldn't be, what can I get out of the church? It should be, what can I do for the church? Where does God want me? Be awake to see things that He wants to use us for. And I'm in that space, and I must say it's such a great place to be, to have the scales lifted off my eyes and be in a space where God can actually use us.
Amazing. A lot of powerful lessons there. Thank you for that. So, Stef, after there was resolution between the two of you, you facilitated a meeting between Adrian and Rob, and you said a really beautiful moment unfolded there. Tell us more.
I think it's worth saying that when we come and we try and resolve conflict, it's often with, I need my pound of flesh, I need them to come and we want to come and ensure that that other person comes and changes. And really, we only got the power to come and change ourselves, and that requires humility. When we come and we try and change other people for them, that then comes and means we try and humble them for themselves, and it often resorts to bullying or manipulation or whatever it might be. And so in terms of resolving conflict, the starting point is always coming and taking responsibility for one's own part. And so we did that in our initial meeting, and in the follow-up meeting then that Adrian and Rob had, I sat there and I almost didn't have to be there. They just went about it in such a mature and amazing way. But as I was sitting there, I was watching this, and like a little boy in front of a candy store, it was like, this is amazing. And as I was sitting there, God just dropped in my heart, where two or more are gathered, there I am too. And over the years, the people have used that to come and justify, well, we're meeting in a coffee shop and there's three of us here and this is the church. And they've just taken it out of context, where it's quoted in Matthew 18 in the context of brothers who are fighting with each other and they've got a fence and how they come and resolve it. And in that moment, God was saying to me, this is the embodiment of that. Where two or more are gathered, there I am too. And I just felt the presence of God come and smile over and endorse what was happening in that moment. And I was like, oh, this is a thing of the Spirit. This is a thing of the Spirit. And in thinking about it, I realized that that moment there is maybe more rare and more uncommon than healings or prophetic words or tongues or these other moves of the Spirit that we look for and see. And I was just flabbergasted by the sweetness of that moment and what God had done.
Yeah, so right. We had a leaders meeting, I think, after you told me about the reconciliation. And I said those exact words to my leaders. I said, I'm all for the Holy Spirit performing miracles in our community, but I've witnessed a miracle this week in the reconciliation between two brothers in a church, all anonymous and everything. But you are so right. It is honestly the power of God alone that can do that. And I mean, that's purpose for all of Paul's epistles, right? I mean, he's writing all of these things to try and help the church and bring unity. He writes to the Philippians and says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. And so that's a great theory, but it needs to work itself out in a very practical way. And so what does it look like practically to honor God, to honor his bride, and to honor one another?
I think this is a big thing that God's busy doing in our church, is fighting for this culture of honor. And I think this thing of honor is to come and is to choose not to see people or the church according to its flaws, but to come and choose to see people or the church according to their true identity in God and who God says they are. And so Adrian's question around is what I'm about to do honoring? It comes and it puts a value upon people, upon the church, that raises and lifts one's eyes up to heaven. And with that, you come and you just measure and weigh up how you're going to respond in a different way than you would otherwise. And I think part of it is this ability to come and give the benefit of the doubt to a situation or to a moment, where you can come and see, maybe they didn't mean this, and you come and you lean in with humility and a sense of, hey, help me understand what's going on here, or what are you trying to say, rather than coming in with a judgment. And so I think part of that process of honoring is actually coming and being open to, in a very amicable, winsome, kind, open, humble way, coming and fighting for clarity in situations. And I can't tell you in the last year how many situations I've seen, and I don't know, maybe this is what's something of what God's doing, where I'm sitting and looking in, and I'm looking at how people are missing what's happening, and it's completely understandable. And so in Adrian's situation, I'm like, gee whiz, I understand it, I really do. But sometimes I have the privilege of seeing all parts of a conversation, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, my goodness, the devil is sowing absolute chaos here in the midst of this. And when we come, and we recently had this, we came and sat down in a conflict situation, and we got the individuals to come and tell their stories separately. And as myself and Kaz sat there, we saw how their stories ran alongside each other, and how they missed each other, and how innocent it all was, but how nefarious it all turned by virtue of the devil coming and twisting it.
Yeah, potent. So I just want to end with this, give you each a chance. I think, Adrian, you have alluded to this quite a lot, but I just want to give you another moment to just kind of summarize it all. But how has this experience changed how you both see each other, and also how you see church family?
We see each other as brothers in Christ, and how much we love each other and care for each other. I just wanted to say, words like relentless pursuit. Coming out this morning, I was thinking about how this all transpired, and how words popped out of what happened, and how it just shows the attributes of God. Your relentless pursuit of, I'm not going to let this be. God is like that. God relentlessly pursues us. A brother coming and saying, we care, you are loved, you are seen. God just showing grace and showing love. And then the final, honor God. It's completely changed my perspective, in the sense that my life has changed, as I said to you earlier. The church family is such an important part of my life. In fact, it's now the most important part of my life. I feel the most safe. I feel the most loved, the most wanted. And I know that God has a plan for us. It's a verse I live by, Jeremiah 29, verse 11, and I'm living in that. And I look to God every single day. And it's such an amazing place to be, where the noise of the world is not a distraction. So much so that I even use it in my business. I walked into work. This has changed my life. Even the relationships with my staff and the way I'd normally deal with stuff is completely changed. There's still an element of fast and furious, but there's a definite take a step back, look at the situation, hear somebody's heart. It was one of the things you said to me early days, Stef, if you remember, when I first approached you, was to go and hear people out. And I did. It was the best advice you gave me. I met with certain individuals and got to know them, got to know their life, because sometimes that's the misperception. You don't understand why people are making certain decisions. You don't understand why they're doing things the way they do it, and they should be doing it like this. But when you take the time to just step back and get to know the person and understand their life and their challenges and some of those things, it puts a lot of perspective on it. So I would say
Brilliant.
That's how I look at it now. Awesome. But with the most important thing, am I going to honor God in everything that I do and say? And I think that, for me, is the way I live now. And the church family is home. It's
amazing.
It's such an amazing place to be. I would encourage anybody. In fact, I encouraged my daughter last month already, just find a church family, because that's where you're safe, and that's where you're going to be cared for, and that's where God is really going to use you and minister with you. So
Beautiful. Stef?
Yeah, man. I think on a personal level, I've always appreciated how straight talking Adrian is. I've loved that. I feel like it's a compliment in many ways, and a credit to me that he could do that, but also a credit to him. But in and through this, and also I've always known you to be a faithful man, and someone who goes above and beyond to serve others. But through the course of this incident, my esteem for you has only risen, and I think part of it is you could really be an old dog, you know, um, in many ways, but you've chosen to be a young dog. And, the older you get, the harder it is to come and to be humble and teachable and to make change. And honestly, Adrian, the stuff that I've seen you do in the course of this year is unbelievable. And it doesn't matter if you're young or hard, sorry, young or old. Um, it's challenging and difficult to do. Yet you came and you've embraced challenges in the midst of the season where I've just marveled at you. And I think part of it was the humility that was required to come and begin to turn the situation around. And it everyone else could come and do and say things, but you needed to come and humble yourself. And for the rest of my days, I will carry with me the weightiness of that humility that you embraced in that moment to come and turn the situation around. And for that, it's just taken our relationship to another level. I said to you, I'd leave my kids with you. I'd feel safe to leave my kids with you. Just in terms of how much I trust you, and I just know you've, off the back of what we've gone through, you've got my back. That I can trust you. That I could call you and you drop anything to come and help me. And I think there was part of that in who you were before, but in terms of how I'm appreciating that now and seeing you, I'm just like, yo, this is a legend. This is a good man. And more broadly, in terms of the church, it just feels like God is using this and using your obedience and humility in this to bless others.
Yeah.
I know I've been blessed through it, and I know the church is being blessed by it. And I feel like there's actually a spirit of reconciliation and restoration that's coming over this church that may just be as a result of your obedience and your humility in this. And I'm so grateful for it. And so I think we may not see in the physical too many things that are adjusting, but in the spiritual, it feels like the heavens have shifted. And with that, I just want to honor you.
Yeah, and I'm incredibly grateful for being invited to be a part of witnessing. I think it's an incredible act of God, I think, in the story of New Gen and in your guys' lives. And it's just an incredibly powerful reminder that of how God works when we come together in humility and that we invite him into the space. Your guys' story, I think, has shown us that reconciliation isn't just about resolving conflict. I think it goes far deeper than that. It's actually about inviting Jesus into the very center of it. And when we do that, even what could have been an incredibly painful moment, and was a painful moment, became holy ground. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so my prayer for us is that for you, for New Gen, for all the churches, that we would be a people who recognize the enemy's schemes. I think that's a great starting point. Who choose to honor one another instead of going into offense, who take responsibility for our part, because that's where the Spirit brings life and he brings unity. And we all know that beautiful psalm of how beautiful and good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity, and we've witnessed that very thing right here in New Gen. And so perhaps, New Gen, that there's someone that you maybe need to reach out to. Maybe this is your nudge to do it. Thanks for watching, for being a part of witnessing what this amazing God has done in the lives of you two. And our prayer is that God may continue to knit our hearts together as churches, your hearts together, and that he would honor and build his bride as he so amazingly does. Appreciate it, and thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Adrian.